Namaste. Welcome to our ninth talk on the Bhagavad Gita. We're going to begin the third chapter, and Arjuna asks, Krishna, if you consider knowledge of Brahman superior to any sort of action, why are you telling me to do these terrible deeds? By terrible deeds, he means the slaughter of all these people, which will turn out, we don't know how many people were on the battlefield, but it was tens of thousands at least. And they were his friends. Many were his relatives. Some of them had been spiritual teachers. And then, of course, there were the rotten people, but even they had a long time history with him. So he'd grown up knowing them. So how could he do this? There's an interesting kind of sidelight to this is we could say, well, if knowledge of Brahman is superior to action, why do any action? Why should there be what we consider right actions or virtuous actions or duties that we should do? Just know Brahman. Now, of course, we'd be pretty dim to ask that question, because is knowledge of Brahman so easy to get? Do we really have knowledge of Brahman? But see, theory is beloved by a lot of people, especially those that pretend to be spiritual seekers. Because theories are just that, they're not realities. They're just concepts. And the concepts are dependent on language. So if we're clever enough, if we're glib enough, if we can juggle words enough, we can come up with concepts and ideas that we will falsely consider knowledge, either ourselves or we'll try to get other people to consider that that's real knowledge, wisdom. And so we can live in theories and talk and never have to do anything or be anything. But if that's how we want it, we can have it. But we'll never really have real knowledge of Brahman, and we'll never really get anywhere. But there are people that's all there is. Jesus speaks of people of these small minds and small goals and said, verily, they have their reward. In other words, they're what they love. They are what they like. So they have themselves. So it's all right. They don't need to bother with anything. They could just be like little Jack Horner and say, what a good boy am I. So he says, your statements seem to contradict each other. They confuse my mind. And that's only because Arjuna's mind was not clear and developed. But he has the good sense to intuit that and says, tell me one definite way of reaching the highest good. Now we have to admire him for that. Because, first of all, he wants the highest good. Most people don't. But he did. And he knew that he didn't have it, so he had to reach it. He had to get it. That's a lot of wisdom, too. There are people that like to say, well, we're all God. And that's the end of the discussion. And he said, tell me the definite way. There is a way of doing it. It isn't like I'll just sit and wait and feel good and love people and be nice and say, oh, holy God, once in a while, and I'll get there. No. It's a real thing and it's definite, which means that's the way to get there. and other ways are not the ways to get there. In other words, judgmental. Sorry to have said that awful word, but that's really what it is. All right. So Krishna says, I have already told you that in this world, aspirants may find enlightenment by two different paths. For the contemplative is the path of knowledge. That right there is important because a contemplative is one who meditates. So the path of knowledge cannot open to anyone but the yogi, the meditator, the one who is truly yoga yukta, joined to yoga, yoked with yoga. And that one can find knowledge. Others do not. For the active is the path of selfless action. In other words, you do it because it's the right thing, it is the good thing, and in the context of the people we live with, that which is beneficial for them. Which is an action that won't just help us, but will also elevate them, which is a great and wonderful thing. All right. So he continues more with action. Freedom activity is never achieved by abstaining from action. Therefore, those who say, oh, I'm a contemplative, I'm not an active, this is simply foolishness. Because meditating is action, thinking is action, breathing is action, talking is action, eating is action. Sleeping is action. Actually, it just means the pranas withdraw inside and all the activity takes place there. Therefore, he says, freedom from activity is never achieved by abstaining from action. Nobody can become perfect by merely ceasing to act. In fact, nobody can ever rest from his activity even for a moment, because that's the nature of this world. It's vibration, and vibration is movement. All, he continues, are helplessly forced to act by the gunas, that is, the qualities inherent in nature. You see, you can't say a child could say, I'm not going to grow up, but they'll have to grow up because their whole physical entity is composed of vibration, and vibration is divided into three forms of change and motion that are known as the gunas, the qualities. So there's no idea of making a choice. That's just the way it all runs out. It all turns out, or runs along, the stream flows along. A man who renounces certain physical actions, but still lets his mind dwell on the objects of his desire, is deceiving himself. In other words, you don't become virtuous by what you don't do. You become virtuous by what you do. You see? I mean, this is so simple, childishly simple, but how many people get it? Well, I never speak against other people. It's a good idea. Well, I'm always sure to try to help wherever I see it's needed. That's good. You need that. But the real virtue behind those statements is the state of the mind and then of the heart of being compassionate and caring. That is the real virtue. The good acts are symptoms of it. All right. So then there are those too that they say, well, I never do this, I never do that. But their minds are drawn to that anyway. They desire it, they would like it. They know that it's bad for them. So they say, I won't. And that is very good and it's wise. But if you think that is enough, you're mistaken. You have to enter the state where you don't want those things. Your mind doesn't go to them. They have no attraction for you. In fact, in a sense, for you, you could come to a point where they don't exist. You see? Like food you don't care for, you never eat. Well, it might not as well, as far as you're concerned, it might as well just disappear from this world. So this is important. It's always inside us, right here in the heart. Antar. I remember Ma Nandamai talking to me, and she said, you have to have antar sannyas. You have to be a sannyasi inside. So that must be. And holding those principles is also an action. So we're going to do something, and our attention should be on making sure that what we do is a thing that leads to higher realities. A truly admirable man controls his senses by the power of his will. There are people who try to talk themselves out of it. And I should see through it. I should understand, yes, that hurt me in the past, so that would hurt me in the future. This is mind gaming. It isn't even mind conditioning. You're trying to condition your mind, but you won't get there. So I'm putting forth my will and I won't. You see, as long as you want, you will go toward it. So the admirable man, he says, all his actions are disinterested. In other words, he's not interested in them for what they gain or what they produce at the moment. It is, first of all, what they show, inner wisdom, and that they lead to it. When you clear out your life, which is important, then the things aren't there to immediately take a hold of you and pull you onto the old paths, the old grooves of prior behavior. Yet, there's still something there we need to guard against. So he says, activity is better than inertia, act, but with self control. To just say, well, I've got to do something. Well, no, please stop a minute. Say, I've got to do the right thing. What is the right thing? What is the wise thing? If you're lazy, Krishna continues, you can't even sustain your own body. Then he makes it wider in its scope. The world is imprisoned in its own activity, except when actions are done as offerings to God. Now, for example, God doesn't need me to make these talks, but it is in the divine plan I should evolve. And one of the ways you evolve is doing what you know according to your knowledge. And to benefit others is good. And since I certainly hope you will be benefited by considering these ideas expressed by Krishna, I should make these talks. I've known the Gita, studied the Gita for over 60 years of my life. I've had people of wisdom talk to me about the Gita, explain aspects of the Gita. So if someone gave us a mental helping hand to me, I should give one to you if you want it. There's a problem. Often we think something's good for people, we try to force it on them. That's a mistake. But anyway, therefore, you must perform every action in this context and be free from all attachments to results. Let's kind of go back. Remember, he said this idea you have the right, you have the authorization, you have the authority to act, but you don't have it for the fruits of the action, the result. Now, one of the things that means, and I should have mentioned it then, was that if you're wise, you're not disappointed at what you call failure because you don't have any guarantee you're going to succeed. When you have a goal you want, you work for the goal, well, you do your best. Then, if it works out, fine. And if it doesn't work out, fine, because you simply did your best. Angelus Silesius, the great mystic, wrote a little 2-line poem. Do your best, angels do no more. And God doesn't do any more than his best. So that is what we do. So we shouldn't become depressed if we don't succeed. We shouldn't become discouraged. We should just say, well, I can do it again. And this is how even God does it. You know, God keeps creating the world over and over and over, or rather, Ishwara does. And so why wouldn't we? Then he continues, in the beginning, the Lord of beings created all men to each his duty. In other words, we had lived before in previous world cycles. We had karma from those times. And that's what our duty is. Our duty is our karma. All right, back to the beginning of the verse. In the beginning, the Lord of beings created all men, each to his duty. Even the kind of body we have is according to our karma. Do this, he said, and you shall prosper. Duty well, and this is a spiritual prosperity that's the most important. For you move yourself along the path of evolution by following your karma. Duty well done fulfills desire. It is the wish fulfiller. That's interesting too. Living and acting according to your karma will bring about the desired result and will actually bring more to you than you even realized was there that you might gain. Doing of duty honors the devas. In this point, he means the devas that were the karma devas, those who created the world, who created the environment of this world for us to live in, and produced even the human body. So when you do what is your purpose in this world, then it's an honor to the deities. You're saying, well, you knew what was right. You put me in this spot, and now I'm doing what I know to do. To you, the devas in turn will be gracious. Sort of be nice to the devas will be nice to you. In other words, you don't ruin their world, you don't harm the world, you don't damage the world. You, seeing yourself as part of the world, work in harmony with that divine purpose and that divine plan. Please the devas, your prayers will be granted. But he who enjoys the deva's bounty, showing no thanks, and the thanks is shown by doing things in the way that God and the gods intend, he thieves from the devas. So this is a very, very important point. That karma is our way of actually showing appreciation for the fact that we're even here and capable of developing, evolving, and going to higher consciousness. So we can pause at that moment or stop at that time to go on to our talk number 10. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for putting up with my stumblings, my hesitations, and also the fact that I have this habit of talking, which must be with my hands, which must be very distracting. So anyway, until then.